Okay, hi everyone. This is a quick video just for, I guess, to help people who are using NetHunt CRM and Xero. Just had several people ask on the NetHunt Facebook community about how to integrate the two to do various things, so I thought I would just make this quick video because it's easier than typing out a long-winded explanation, and just show you one example of what we've done and more or less how it works. I guess you would want to have an okay understanding of how Zapier functions work, because there's a certain logic to how they're built, and I don't really know how to explain that. I'm just going to explain how my logic's worked through this process, and this is by no means the only way or necessarily the best way to do it. It's how I've done it, and it works, and we use a lot of Zaps to do a lot of things and save hours and hours of time with various integrations from NetHunt. So this one here, as you can see, this is called procurement invoice. Procurement invoice is when we start billing our clients for our product, and it's the first invoice that goes out, and it is a percentage of the total quote we give them for the product. Procurement is 50% of the total quote, and it's the first invoice we send out before we start manufacturing our product. So the first thing that happens on this first step here is that we check to see if the stage field has been changed. So the stage field is this one here, and our jobs go through stages throughout the whole the sales and manufacturing and installation process. So when this stage is changed to procurement, you can see here there's a bunch of different stages, but this one is looking for procurement. That's what will trigger this Zap. So at first it checks to see if the stage field has been changed. So regardless of what we change that field to, it could be any of these, this Zap is going to trigger. The next step is to check to see if the stage field now equals procurement. That's the one that we're looking for in this case. So here you can see stage exactly matches procurement, and it also checks to see if the value field in NetHunt exists. It's got to have a figure in it. Now the value field is this next one, is this one just above our stage, and that is the value of the sale. So in this test job here, I've just put in there a figure of $10,000. There has to be a number in there, and that is a dollar value field. So if that's empty, then this Zap won't go any further. So once it's done that, then it comes down to this next one, which is remove any amount already billed from the quoted price. Now, this is something that doesn't happen very often, but this particular step checks to see if another amount has already been billed to the client. It may be that the client has paid a deposit for our product, and we want to deduct that amount from the deduct that amount from the total bill that's going to be billed in this procurement stage. So this filter here checks that, and it will check it off. Let me have a look. Okay, so it looks for this field here, the send mini deposit field in NetHunt CRM, and if it has something in it, this is a tick box. If it has something in it, meaning it's true, it will deduct $2,000, and if it's false, it won't deduct anything. This is just an example of this is a random number that we've put in for the purpose of testing this Zap. So once it's removed that amount, it's now ready to calculate the 50% of the quoted price, which is what we bill in this case. So this one here, once again, it's another, this is a formatter, as was this one. This is a formatter function, working with numbers. So it's basically going to format the numbers and it's going to take the value, which we've got in there as 10, and that value was this one here. It's going to multiply it by 0.5, which is 50%, and then subtract the result of this step of the zap, which in this case was 2,000, and then that will give us a result, and that's what our output is going to be, 3,000. So it obviously started as a different number, and it's ended up at 3,000. So that's that there. We've now got the price. Change 80% invoiced field to 0. So this is a step. I won't go into this step because it's complicated why we do this, and this is just going to confuse this video if I go into that. So let's just imagine that isn't in there. This is actually going back into NetHunt and updating a record, and I may cover that on a different video, but not this time. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to extract the first name from the accounts contact. Now the accounts contact obviously is the people up here that we've created as records linked to this particular record that we call opportunities. So it's going to extract some information out of those. Now this is another formatter function. This is a text one where you can find, replace, capitalize, remove HTML. You can do various things with the text formatter in Zapier, and this is why I said at the beginning of the video it's important to have some sort of understanding of how Zapier works and how some of this stuff works. And you may have to play around with that. What I do is I create, as I have for this example, I created a test opportunity in this case that you can play around with, and just do that. Just create zaps and put formatters in that and just see how it works, because this stuff can take a long time to learn. It really can. I've spent hours and hours and hours doing these zaps, but they save so much time, so it's worth persisting with. So what we're doing here is we're extracting the first name from the accounts contact. This is optional. You don't have to do that, but using this string split function. So the billing name was Homer Simpson, and we are extracting the first name, which is obviously Homer. So hopefully that's what we have. Oh, Allan. Okay, we've obviously got some new data coming, and it hasn't been updated in this here. So it's extracted my first name out of my full name back from here. Okay, so the next step is, by the way, this Zapier have updated their interface, in the last 6 months, and it's just horrible. It's a real shame because the original format was really, really nice and easy to use. It now, which is really typical of tech companies, and I'm going to say NetHunt is an exception because I believe they are, but the amount of features that get added on that just make the thing worse is just stuns me on most applications. NetHunt would be one of the few that we use that I don't think get worse with time. Okay, so step 7 here is the same as the previous one. It's just extracting the last name. So this is so we have a first and last name in Xero, basically. So it's doing this exactly the same thing. It's a text formatter function. And using this string split again, and it's extracting the last name, which will be my last name here, Fullerton. So we have first name and a last name to go into Xero. Then I've got a delay. Now, I don't know if the delay is necessary, but I usually put them in because it just means that if there is for some reason some sort of delay in the internet or however all that stuff works, I'm not going to end up with a funny result. So now we create and update the contact in Xero. So if we come into customize contact here, so we're obviously we're going into Xero, needless to say, and we're going to create or update a contact. That's the name of the Zap action. We have our find your account, and then all of these fields will come up automatically, and you can see what I put in there. The billing name, which is the full name from, and that will reference back to, let's see if I can show you that. So I will be taking it from this first Zap, of this first step of the Zap. So that, because what you have to do is you have to make sure that that you're referencing the right record in NetHunt. And the way I do that is that in this very first instance, the very first step of this Zap, I have this function to check to see if the stage field has been changed, and it's looking at that point. That is determining which record we're looking at. So as soon as that stage field is changed, so if we go back into NetHunt and I've got this Allan Fullerton test job, as soon as I've updated this stage, that triggers this Zap. And for the rest of this Zap, that very first step refers to the Allan Fullerton test job. So I always refer back to that first step if I want to look up anything out of that record. So for example, if further down the Zap I want to maybe, let's have a look in here. Let's say I want to pull the lead source out, so that I can send that off to our sales team to know which lead source has generated this sale. I won't go and look for this record again using Zapier. I will just reference right back to the first step where that record has already been identified. Now, that may seem simple to some of you or not to others, but to me it wasn't simple for a long time, and I had a huge amount of trouble trying to make it grab the correct record in NetHunt every time. But this is why I say it's important to play around, create yourself a test record and just play with it, because it's the only way to learn. So anyway, that we get the name and basically you can just fill these fields from Xero. All of these come out of Xero with anything you want out of your NetHunt record. And sometimes it comes down a little bit to having your NetHunt record formatted in a certain way so that the data that comes out of it into Xero matches up correctly. For example, I have a billing street, billing suburb, billing city. All of those are set up in my record in NetHunt. You could have a bank account number if you want, whatever you want to put in there. Now, so names, etc., etc. Now, something that I haven't shown in this Zap because it happens in a previous step when we're working with a job, is to make sure that all of the data we need to have has actually been entered into the record in NetHunt. So for example, you wouldn't be able to create a contact without a billing name, for example. So it's important that the billing name has been entered into your NetHunt record. And we have a previous Zap to check that. As it is, if we didn't have a billing name in this particular example now, this won't actually end up working properly. It may still create the contact, but it won't have a billing name. So when you go to do the invoice, there'll be a problem. Now, we've dealt with that, as I said, in a previous Zap, so I won't cover it in this video, but you can quite easily use Zapier to check that you've got everything you need before running the Zap. And that is really, really handy, but it can also get complicated. So we'll leave that for another video. Once again, I've got a delay, and then we're now creating the sales invoice in Xero. So leading up to this stage, all of these previous stages have basically been about getting the information we're going to need to end up using to create the invoice. Having For example, removing any amount from the quoted price, calculating what the actual bill is going to be worth, getting the first name and the last name, and creating the contact. So we're getting ourselves ready to create the invoice, so that when we come down to this create invoice stage, everything we need for that is easy. It's there, and it's just putting data into fields. So we have a contact name, which is all you can see. That's coming from Xero because we created that earlier. The email address was created earlier. The status, in this case, I've set it as approved, but you may set it as draft, or depending on how your processes work, you can set that however you want. In this case, I've got a due date of today's date plus 7 days. So we want the bill to be paid in 7 days. You can choose currency, all of this stuff, your branding theme, which is something you will have set up in Xero already. Your billing reference, that is coming out of NetHunt. Once again, I'm not actually going back to NetHunt looking for the job again, or looking for the record again and then finding the billing reference. I'm literally just going to this first stage here and getting the billing reference out of that. That way we're not getting any confusion. And then we have the line item types. Now, for what we do in our business, we are only ever invoicing one single line item. That's the way we're manufacturing a product, and we sell that product as a package, not as individual parts. I recommend this for a lot of people, even if you're in the service business and you're providing a range of services. It's a really good way to do it is to quote for your services up front and then bill them as one single line, because it takes out a lot of complication from the billing point of view. It makes things like this a lot easier, but it also, I guess this is a bit of business advice, but someone knowing what they're going to have to pay up front rather than leaving things, a little bit, I wonder what it's going to cost, is a lot better, and it means you can often get away with charging more. Because at the time you're quoting, the client really wants it or needs it, and they'll accept a quote rather than accepting a bill that horrifies them retrospectively. So there's just a bit of business advice that you may or may not want. But anyway, so we have a description, which I've just typed in there, a quantity. Now the unit price comes from step 4 of this Zap, which was calculate 50% of the quoted price. And then you can set your accounts, tax rates, all that sort of thing. Okay, so all that information that's gone into that invoice, we've already extracted from NetHunt from those previous steps. I guess that's the key. The key is to get all that data together and have it almost in a packet ready to go, so that you can just pull it straight out. You're not going back into NetHunt looking for it. Okay, so I guess that's the most confusing part of it covered. This step here, we're just sending an email to let the admin team know that there is an invoice ready to approve. Once it's approved, they can send it. Step 13 notifies the sales team that we have started billing a project and we need to get interior colors. So it's part of our manufacturing processes to know once we've started billing them, we're about to make them a product, and we need to get the interior colors so that off the client, so we know what to make essentially. There's a few more steps down here which I'll just breeze over, but we use another product called Process Street to manage our manufacturing processes. So it basically creates electronic checklists for our staff in the factory and out in the field, so that they can tick off tasks that are required at each stage of the manufacturing process as they do them. So in this case, once we've invoiced the procurement to the client, we create a job management checklist, which is, that essentially goes into the production team, so that the guys on the floor and in the office can tick off all of the tasks they need to do insofar as procuring equipment and actually manufacturing the product. And then finally, we have another delay. Now, this delay is for a whole day. And then we send another email to the accounts department or the admin department to check that they've sent the invoice. So that because the invoice was due in 7 days, it's reasonable that the customer wants to receive it as soon as possible to give them a chance to look at it, check it, and then pay it. So just so that we make sure it doesn't get forgotten about, we just send a reminder. Okay, so yep, sorry, this has been a long video. I hope it makes sense. You may have to watch it 2 or 3 times if you're not too sure about Zapier or anything, but because I've done so many of these, I've probably missed out a lot of stuff that I assume you know that you don't, so I apologize for that. Give it a go. As I say, the best thing to do if you're not familiar with Zapier is to create a test record in NetHunt, maybe even a demo company in Xero, and just play. Just spend hours trying things, because it really, really will make a massive difference to how you operate your company if you can get these apps working well. I would conservatively estimate that we would probably have saved 5 to 6 hours a day of labor with Zaps, at least. Probably even more, and especially when you get Zaps that interact with your clients, it can save a lot of time because it saves a lot of unnecessary phone calls and emails. So give it a go. Good luck.